Oh, happy no. What is the intro, y'all? I feel like I ain't did a podcast episode in so long. What is it? Hey, it's Marthea Pitts, the MSW coach. How you doing? How you feeling? How your day going? Today is Tuesday, and I was getting ready for my day, and I was reminded of a time when I was still in my case management job. So if you're new here, welcome, 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 welcome. I had only two case management jobs before I pivoted to macro level work and started making the most money I had ever made in my over 10 plus years in the job market and was doing aligned work, right? If you don't know, my population is pregnant, parenting, youth, and young adults. It's my professional mission to ensure that they have access to good quality, good paying jobs to help them achieve lifelong self-sufficiency through employment. And I have the MSW Coach Education Company because it's my way of getting more change makers out into the workforce in their different respective areas, be it environmental justice, be it healthcare access, be it education access, so you can make it better for my population while make it better for yours. And so this morning I was thinking about the fact of when I was still I only had two case management jobs. My first was where I worked in an American Job Center as a workforce development career counselor. And then my second was as the transitional housing coordinator in a DV program servicing five rural counties. And then also in that workforce development center, I service five rural counties as well. But what I was thinking about this morning was the fact that when I was in my first case management job, even though my title was officially workforce development career counselor, um, I remember because I was only making $37,100 a year, which was literally $100 above the like guideline. I always forget if it's above or below the poverty guidelines, but it was only $100 more than technically what it would take to qualify as a household of two or maybe three for the actual welfare transition 10 of temporary assistance for needy families benefits that I was helping to um, like administer, right? The program that I worked in was the welfare transition program, which is a requirement of getting cash assistance from the government that the recipients have to do work activities. So I was on the other side of the house. I wasn't in the Department of Children and Families processing the applications. However, I was the person on the other side of the house that was ensuring that they did what they needed to do to comply with keeping the benefits, which in reality was just like a couple of $100, which was really is literally nothing in the grant. Like when you really look at it from a zoomed out lens, when you compare and contrast what they all have to do to get a couple of $100 a month. So I remember one that being like one of the paradigm shifts that I had in that position. This is all like leading up to like I knew that I was meant in my social work career to do work more on systems level issues rather than being the one upholding the system and maintaining the status quo and creating more barriers and opportunities for my people. Because one, the things that people had to do to maintain those couple $100, like, and they're already suffering from time poverty is just nonsense, honestly. But anyway, so in that job, I realized one of my first paradigm shifts was the fact that as staff, we were only being paid $100 more than what technically some of my colleagues um would need to like qualify for these benefits, right? So one, we were being the overseers, but we couldn't even benefit from the services that were being provided to them. Okay. So in that job, because I was making even though that was the most I had ever made in my career up until that point, coming from a background where I only had a high school diploma for like the first 7 to 8 years of my like my work life in the job market in the workforce, which is why I went back to school, got my Associate of Arts degree, got a bachelor's degree in business, and then began to work on my master's degree while I was in that job. It was already a part of my career and education plan to start a master's program. And I started, I think it was like a year after I got that case management job. So it was in that job because I was still making pennies. And up until that point, I was like, it was not, it was not uncommon for me to work multiple jobs, right? Because a lot of my college tuition I had to pay out of pocket because when I first went to community college, I'm a graduate of a community college, actually one of the top community colleges and now referred to as a university, a college in the country. And so because I flunked so miserably because of life, and being a young mom and all of the things that come along with that, I had to pay for a lot of my tuition out of pocket. And plus, because I was just always making pennies, I've always had to have multiple jobs. So in that case management job, even though I was excited, I was making the most money that I've ever made at that point. I felt like my degrees that I had up until that time, which was technically my bachelor's degree, because I'm still only working on my master's, was like they did what they were supposed to do. Because prior to that, I would say the most that I ever made was like 32,000. And being that I lived in a city at that time, which is the capital of Florida, where state government jobs is king, right? It's goals. Um, I always knew about case management type jobs, and I always wanted one because I had a homegirl of mine who always had case management jobs, but she had a bachelor's degree and I didn't. So it was always like a goal of mine to get a case management job. I just never had the education. So when I got that first job, I was excited about the fact that I was making 37,100 because I'm like, okay, it paid off all of these years in school. I'm now making more money. Keep in mind, this city, one of the years that I was on the front lines as a case manager, was identified to be the most economically segregated city in the nation. That alone should tell you everything you should know. So I'm in this job. I'm excited at first about the fact that I'm making 37,100. But again, we are quickly moving into the world where $500 rent is no longer a thing. Car notes being under a couple of $100 is no longer a thing. I live in Florida in a college town, so even if you got a little put like I always had, low car insurance is not a thing. Food costs are slowly going up. Right. And so when I got that job and I was first excited about the 37,100, my reality quickly set in that I still needed to have another job, right? So I remember, and I thought about this morning, and so I was like, I want to come on and talk to y'all about this because all of my coaching clients go through this experience that I'm getting ready to break down for you, where you realize like you have amassed too much experience, too much education, just too much of knowing what you want to do versus what you don't want to do, that you get to what I call the point of no return, right? And how in that, how exhilarating it is. And I hate the word empowering. I hate that word. When I worked in nonprofit world and my second case management job, I don't like it because what does it really mean? And how can somebody really empower themselves if they don't have, the basic resources and tools? But that comes from working in a city in 2017 that was identified to be the most economically segregated city in the nation. And for multiple years during that same time period, when I was working on the front lines as a case manager, it was the poorest zip code in Florida. Probably still is. I haven't looked it up. Right. And so I just don't like the word empower. But the more like experience you have, the more education you have around what you are qualified to do. And this is why I always get excited when my coaching clients get to this point when they're working with me. And they're learning about like what they can do outside of typical social work jobs, outside of standard case management jobs. And they all come back and say the same thing of, I either saw a case management job and I was like, nope, I don't want to do that because I know that I qualify for these other jobs. Or that maybe like an old supervisor from a case management job had approached them or a colleague and told them to come apply for the job. And they're like, no, I can't, I don't want to do that anymore, right? Like they all turn it down. And so I remember this morning my experience that specifically when I had pivoted from call center jobs to case management jobs, because a lot of you probably are at that point right now in your career where what happened was I was like, I need to make some more money. So because I wasn't a stranger to having multiple jobs, so much so I remember my grandma a few years ago, probably not even a few years, probably like 7 years ago, probably I was like, yeah, I probably was in my second case management job at that time. And I remember her sitting me down having a conversation with me about her concern of the fact that I worked so much. And I'm like, Grandma, these are not the days where you bought. My grandmother is a property owner, right? She owned multiple homes, rented them out. Like she did that back then. I was like, Grandma, the world is shifting. Like the things are not the price they were when you were. And I never had the words to articulate that to my family because I didn't understand what was happening. I just always thought like what I was experiencing in my life was just because of me and my bad choices, which a lot of it probably was, not probably was, but also it's because I'm the in-between generation, right? Where the old is phasing out and the new is coming in. But because we haven't had enough like time in the new, people are still thinking it's like the old and it's not. So anyway, I remember my grandma even having concern about how much I worked and all of the things and that I need to slow down and take care of myself and this and this and this. And I'm like, girl, I'm not working because I like it. I'm working because I gotta make money to eat, to feed me and my baby. So I was at this point where I was like, I need another job. And I remember that I applied for one of the call center jobs because I worked in state government for almost, probably a little over 7 years. I worked in a multitude of different departments. This is how I got really, really good at reading policies, interpreting bureaucratic regulations, statutes, things like that, that later helped me in my policy, one of my macro jobs, which is as a policy consultant, one of two in the state of Florida for a workforce development program. And so, I remember I applied to one of my old call center jobs at a specific department. And I didn't even have to do an interview because the people that were there in leadership now actually were people that I trained when they first came to the department and were in like roles equivalent to what I was. Well, let me take that back. I only had a high school diploma at that time. I forget the title. So technically I was like one level down for them. They came in one level. So think of it like a one and a two position. I was a one, they were a two because they had a degree, a bachelor's degree, and I had nothing. I just had a few hours of community college from when I went straight out of high school, which wasn't sufficient according to the new state law that was regulating this department in this specific area of work that I did. Right. And so now that person, this one specific person, is now the head over this whole department. And so I remember applying and I didn't even have to like, I don't even remember doing the interview. They just brought me in because they knew me because everywhere I worked, I'm always a top performer everywhere. Even I'm always a top performer, right? So I didn't even have to like do an interview. They just brought me in. Even the person that was coordinating the onboarding, I had worked side by side with her on the floor, and she's now over this other unit that's responsible for the like onboarding. So they bring me in, I start, okay, and I'm in training. And I remember the first day of training, it was like, okay. I went after work. I'm like, I'm just, I'm here to make my money, da 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 da. And that first day I was sitting in the training room, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like, because at this point, coming from a call center environment to a case management job, even though it may not have been the most ideal salary wise, I still had way more freedom in my case management job that I never had in a call center job. In a call center job, you are literally tethered to the phone. And this is before COVID, and now all of the call centers are remote and you work from home. I used to pray for a remote call center job, right? Because that would have saved me significantly on childcare, after school, summer camp, which I probably would have still sent my child because I believe wholeheartedly in quality enrichment programs for your children. I don't want a little latchkey kid that ain't well developed. Right, everybody need their space. So I would have still probably sent my child, but it was just a lot that came with being a single parent, being working outside of the home, being your own sole support system. Yes, I have my grandmother. Yes, I have my other family members, but I am my sole provider. I am not the person that has, how do you say it, a silver spoon. I ain't got none of that. If I don't work, I don't eat. It's just me, right? So, I started the job. I sat there, and it just didn't feel right in my soul. It just didn't feel right, and I was like, I have come too far. Marthea, that did not have a degree, I said would sit here and be taking in the training and doing all of the things. But here I am with all of these degrees. At this point, I have 2 degrees, 2 of them. And I don't think I had started my master's program at that point. I probably was getting ready to, or maybe it was just like in the first semester. I'm like, I now have an AA degree, even though this department, in all fairness, a large percentage of the people that work there have degrees. However, the ones don't require one, right? But the position that I was applying for was a one. You don't need a degree, right? And so I'm like, this work is very low level. Like, I'm beyond this. This was an ideal job for Marthea, who was 22, just entering the workforce. Because for the first 5 years of my daughter's life, I didn't work. I was a stay-at-home young mom. Right now, the girls make content off. I said, "Do you know how much money I would have had?" Actually, I had an opportunity. I could have been on YouTube, but I was too afraid. That's a whole other story for another time. Because I've been watching YouTube just that long. But anyway, I was a stay-at-home mother, so like I probably was like 25, 24 when I really got into the, probably like 26, 27, when I really got into the job market, got into the workforce. And I'm like, I'm no longer that person. I'm now Marthea, who's what, probably like 33, 33. Not, I know I was nowhere near 35, probably like 33. How long it take to get to 28 to 9? Yeah, I probably was like 32, 33. And when I had that job, I probably was like 26, 25, 26, something like that. Right. I'm like, I'm no longer this person. I can't, it just did not feel right. Right. When I say feel, it just did not feel aligned. And more than that, because when it comes to my career, I move off of facts versus feelings. At that point, I knew that the experience that I had superseded the level of work they wanted me to do. Now, if I was what I call a universal career seeker, a person who will just take any job, take a job, and not a mission driven, so a person, career seeker who's very intentional with their career, even if it's just mission driven in regards to the quality of life that you want to live. But mine is in regards to the quality of work I want to put out into the world, the impact I want to make into the world. I was not aligned because yeah, that work is impactful when you look at it, but it didn't align to like what I'm able to do, what my capabilities are, the skill sets, the knowledge, the critical thinking skills that I had developed over the last almost 10 years, however many years it had been. less than 10 years since I was in that position before. I've now gone to college. I've been taught how to critically think. I'm thinking different. I've experienced a lot of paradigm shifts. I've experienced a lot of changes in my personal life where 33, I was in the role of getting to know me, preparing for my daughter to graduate from high school. So during that time, I was shifting from being a person who always needed to be in a relationship, a person who never could do things by herself. But what do you mean go by myself to dinner? I would intentionally like go out into my community and attend community events, getting out of my shell, knowing that, okay, my daughter is getting ready to go to college in like 5 years, 3 or 4 years. Marthea, start getting yourself together because I technically started that plan of getting me together when she was in middle school because I know that it was going to require me once she go to college. It's going to require a different version of me. This is why I always talk to you all about like you want to be strategic. Everything should be planned out, even if the plan has to change, because we don't know what will happen, but you still need a plan, right? So I'm now in this whole different space. This is the equivalent of, I'm just coming up with this wild example. This is the equivalent of maybe in high school, I never worked in well, I worked at KFC for 3 shifts. I don't even think it was 4. 3 shifts, that includes the training, and I quit. I begged my mama for years to let me work as a high schooler. Worst ass decision ever, right? So anyway, it's the equivalent of like you working at a fast food restaurant in high school. However, fast forward, you're now, and that you did that when you were what age did you start working? I don't, you can start working. I don't know. Let's say you were 14, 15, right? That's the equivalent of when you were 14, your 14, 15-year-old self worked at McDonald's. However, fast forward, you're now 30. You're now 30. You have a master's degree under your belt because many of you went to college straight out of school. But even let's say you got a bachelor's degree under your belt. That's the equivalent of you going and you 30 and you going back to McDonald's. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get caught up in like trying to over intellectualize what I'm talking to you about today and be like, well, if I had to, I would. Yeah, if you had to, if you had no other options, you would. If I had to, I would. But when you know better, you do better. And what I mean by that is you didn't know what all you could do as your 15-year-old self. And you didn't know how any experience that you had at that time could position you for a job outside of the fast food industry, being a cashier. However, as your 30-year-old self, the one who has gotten multiple degrees, has multiple things under your belt, the one who has gotten paid over $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year, $70,000 a year, it will be hard for you to go get the fast food job because you know that you can get other jobs. You know that you can get other non-labor jobs. You know that now you can get jobs based off of your intellect, based off your critical thinking. And because of, and not just that, not just you knowing, you have receipts, right? You had to work at McDonald's because you didn't have nothing to show to people to say that you're capable of doing something better or different. Let's say different, right? So that was in alignment with where you were in life at that time. However, fast forward 30 something year old you are at a different level, right? And so I'm naming that for you if you are feeling that in your personal life, in your professional life right now, where you keep trying to go back to things that you did in the past that used to work for you, right? Be it people, places, things, job positions. It ain't gonna work for you no more because you know that you can do more, right? And the issue is that many people keep trying to force the square peg in the round hole. Ain't that's what the people say? You keep trying to force the square peg in the round hole, and you wonder why you keep coming up short. And then in order to do that, you're like, okay, maybe I need another degree. Maybe I need such and such and such. No, what you need to do is find, okay, based on this new level of life of where I am, what is in alignment with that? What is my new definition for alignment? Not go sit in the job that you did 10 years ago when you were different, you knew different, you thought different, you saw the system different, where you were a bright and shiny social worker and you hadn't and the veil hadn't been lifted from your eyes yet, that you were upholding the system, not removing barriers, that you are a cog in the machine, right? When you knew you don't know that. Because I experienced that. I'm here to help. I'm here to change. No, you're here to uphold the system. That's what you're doing. You here to make those people life miserable. You are the checks and balances, right? But when you know that, okay, that ain't that ain't alignment with what I had envisioned. Is you don't stay, you don't go back and stay. You should be pursuing opportunities to get in aligned space, to do the things that align with your values, that align with your perspective, that align with where you are. Okay. But I wanted to share that it's very real. You will attempt to go back. You may even go and sit for a little bit. This is how you see social workers who've been in the game longer than 10 years and they still in these very entry level case management jobs. It's because they went back, even though they have deeper desires to do something more high level, to do something where they're creating more opportunities, to do something that aligns with who they are. Ain't nothing worse than me. I'm gonna say this on because I'm probably gonna hurt some feelings. Ain't nothing worse to me than seeing somebody who has been in the workforce way longer than me. Because I know my story is very untraditional, right? Very untraditional, but that's because I quickly figured out what I needed to do to accelerate my career. I figured it out on my own. I didn't read it in a book. I did a lot of trial and error. That's what I teach my coaching clients now, the system that I created for myself. But nothing worse to me than see somebody who's been in the workforce longer than me, who has more credentials than me, and who are in very entry level jobs. My heart bleeds for them, but they are the hardest people to work with because at that point, because they done been there so long, they cannot they cannot fathom that there's another option. So these are the social workers that tell you, no, you need such and such license. No, you have to do such and such. No, that's not possible. Anything is possible when you arm yourself with information. Anything is possible if you just at least try. But for a lot of them, because they've been there so long, their fear overrides their critical thinking ability and skills. Right? Because they've been a part of the system so long, it's been sucked out of them the possibility, the dreaming, the ideation of more of a different system, of them being on a different level in this whole hierarchical of power and authority, right? They can't see it anymore because they're so sucked into the system. Let me see, I'm getting excited. Let me get out there and go eat my late breakfast. But I want that for you. I'm so excited when my coaching clients get that have that moment. They're like, nah, I don't want to do that. They don't say it like that. But they're like, nah, I ain't doing that no more. I don't want to do that. I don't want another case management job. Right? And I'm not saying this stuff is going to be easy, that it's going to fall out of the sky, because it's going to require a different version of you, because you have to unlearn all of the bad, wrong stuff you done been taught subconsciously and consciously since you were a little kid about when it comes to jobs, from watching your parents in dead end jobs, from your teachers and your principals and your career counselors telling you, no, you can't do that when you came up with an idea, from you working in your job where you had toxic supervisors and leaders, from you watching your friends and your cousins and your family members, they just all suffering their career into retirement, from society telling you need all of this, you need all of these things. You're gonna have to unlearn that. And for a lot of people, you don't want to release it because it's more comfortable to stay with the known than move into the unknown. It's more comfortable to stay in the darkness because I know where everything and I know my Bible sitting right here. I know my lamp right here. I know my phone right here. But if I walk out in the world and try to go look for my car keys 3 streets over, I'm gonna be afraid in the dark. Calm down right there. You see how excited I get? This how this is my thing. When you passionate about a topic, it come out like this. So I really want to share with you that stop trying to go back. It's time to move forward. It's time to move forward. Stop trying to go back to the old familiar places. The reason you, when you went back to that old job, to that old what y'all call them, firms. I don't know, because I ain't never been clinical, but I've had a lot of clinical clients where you go back to that old practice. I think that's what y'all call them. You go back to that old practice and you're like, well, dang, when I was here 5 years ago, it was gravy. I just had to see such and such. And now when you go there, it's like you always just coming up against a wall because you ain't supposed to be there. You ain't supposed to be there. Right. And sometimes you got to sit in the unknown for a little bit until it's revealed to you what you're supposed to be doing. And that's why I teach my coaching clients on how to get clear about your next step. So you don't have to sit in the unknown and be like, oh, this is scary. You ain't got to figure it out on your own. I did all of the figuring out for y'all. I shedded all the tears for y'all. I experienced all the hard times in my career for y'all. I wish I had what I provide as a service now when I was trying to get out of call centers and case management jobs. I wish somebody would have had a program like what I offer. So when my coaching clients come to me, somebody just shared it on Sunday during the coaching call. And they were like, no, I had to turn down the opportunity. Like, no, that's not what I want to do. I want a macro job doing this, this, and this, utilizing my interest in this, and this, and my passion on this topic. Why are they able to say that succinctly? But more than that, why are they able to turn it down with so much certainty and not fear of, if I don't take this job now, I won't ever get nothing? Because they know what they know and they know that is right. They've learned how to effectively assess the experience that they have as a case manager. They understand how valuable that is in the job market by actually learning how to go and find these aligned positions, looking at the actual salary and the pay ranges that these non-social work employers are paying them. They understand what it means, what it will take for them to be competitive, and they have a rinse and repeat system to do that because I teach my people that. So stop trying to go back. Okay, I'm gonna go make my breakfast, aka lunch, maybe even slash dinner. Happy macro career planning. Bye.